most of that is not normal ever. Like brain deterioration, like if you listen to the work of Dr. Daniel Amen, he talks about like it doesn't matter if you're 70, if your brain is not functioning well like that, like you're forgetting stuff or your brain fog, or like you're just missing moments of your life, there's an issue. It's not necessarily mold. It could be, hormones. It could be substances that you're taking kind of over a prolonged period of time, but it's not like a natural progression of human longevity. It's not something that should happen. So if you are experiencing ongoing symptoms, you definitely have to look into it, but it does feel overwhelming. I get why. And it should be the work of our medical system to do what functional doctors are now doing, which is taking a full kind of spectrum of what is going on in your life. And the hard part for most people is that costs a lot of money because it's more personalized and it doesn't come with your insurance. And most of the things that clean up mold do not come under your insurance. And most insurance companies don't even want to deal with mold.
Welcome to the Pure Wellness Podcast, where we talk about what it takes to live a holistic lifestyle by making conscious, healthier choices. Our hope is that these discussions will inspire you to strengthen your daily practice to improve overall physical, mental, emotional, and social well-being. Pure Wellness Podcast provides information solely for educational purposes and is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. I'm your host, Johanna Altman, founder of One Body Medicine, avid health enthusiast, and mother of 3. Join me and industry professionals as we explore human potential in the pursuit of pure wellness. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again for the Pure Wellness Podcast. I have Dr. Allen as a host again with me. So, Doctor, welcome.
Happy to be here.
And I have a very special guest, ChrisLee.
Hi.
Hi. And today I'm really excited to be talking about a topic that is almost like a silent killer, which is mold toxicity. And it's something that's pretty prevalent in our daily lives. And I was so fascinated with meeting Chris and hearing his story at our clinic that I thought it would be very important for you guys to all hear his personal journey and the things that he had to overcome in order to heal himself. So Chris, thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Of course. When Dr. Allen and I met you at the clinic, you just stood out to me as someone that was very vibrant, that was full of energy, that you're a huge health advocate. And I learned actually so much from you. And the reason why I'm intrigued by your story is because I was not aware myself of how debilitating mold toxicity could be. I heard about it. I've been aware that symptoms of mold toxicity are pretty common in other underlying illnesses, and
Sure.
they might not present themselves as anything to be worried about. But your story was very different. So walk us through your journey.
Yeah. I've been in LA for probably about 7 or 8 years, songwriter, producer. I've been kind of pushing that forward for a long time, and I have a media company, so very involved in media. And when 2020 happened, obviously, like everything just got flipped upside down. So I had a couple major successes around there. I had like a platinum record, and then I was on a show on NBC, and everything felt like really great. And then pandemic hit, we were all completely shut down and couldn't write. All those opportunities, a lot of those opportunities that stemmed from those things had gone away. And like everybody else, we were stuck in our house. And so we were stuck in our house for long periods of time. And I'm trying to think of when it actually started, but we started feeling very similar symptoms, my wife and I. We both had trouble walking up hills and trouble with breathing and staying hydrated or motivated or energized. And we really honestly had no idea what was going on, but we realized that our symptom sets were really similar, which was really odd. So if it was like something else entirely, it would be very strange if it was that. Also, around that time was when COVID vaccinations were running out too. So it was a combination of, I think, several things going on, like an immunoresponse from that and being vaccinated, and then also being in a place that had mold. And we didn't know at first. We were just trying to figure out what was wrong with us. We went to doctors, and like one of the doctors we went to, you know, I don't hold anything against her, but I think it's a kind of a greater issue with the American healthcare system of, you know, we're two high functioning people. My wife was working at Lululemon at the time. I'm working on tons of different projects all the time. And we're coming in saying we're sick. And they're like, you know, we tested all your stuff. You don't seem sick. Like, have you thought about therapy? And we're like,
that's it, Chris. Yeah.
I was like, look,
Yeah.
I'm a big advocate for therapy. I think it's really great to talk about these things and work through like past traumas and all that stuff. I think it's incredible. But I was like, we're sick. Like, we're not feeling well. Like, things are not right for us. But it felt like the healthcare professionals we came up against, there was nothing really wrong. Or just with what I've learned about the healthcare system is doctors have a very limited period of time to do anything valuable.
I actually want to talk about, because I think this is important, the type of doctors that you saw. Were you going to your internal medicine doctor? Were you going to a specialist?
Sure.
Like walk us through the process of if you saw one doctor, two or three.
I saw the doctor we have, One Medical, which is that, you know.
It's like a concierge.
Yeah, it's
right?
like a concierge medical thing. Just essentially it's like $200 a year and you get nice offices, and it's not like, it's not just like absolute chaos.
Yeah.
But we went and saw, she's, I think technically an osteopath. And she's great. Like it's really not even anything against her. I think it just goes to show you how unknown and how it's not at the front of their mind. Like it's not at the front of doctors' minds. And if it's presenting, and because people have different presentations of symptoms too. So if it's presenting different, it's hard to really figure out what it is. So in all fairness to her, it's not really her issue. And actually the way we found out about it, we went and saw an osteopath who I love. Like he's been very important for our family for a long time. His name is Arsen Nalbandian, I think his last name is. And he's a craniosacral osteopath. And he's just like, I joke that he's like, when he goes, he kind of like cradles your head and he's manipulating some of the fluid movement in your head and like realigning plates in your skull and like just micro movement. So instead of a chiropractor who's like doing big adjustments, he's doing kind of manipulation of these kind of fluid systems in your body. But it has this experience of being like, you kind of go into a world with him. It's very interesting. Like you kind of feel like he's connected inside of you and you're like sitting with him in a room. And we went to him because we were feeling like really lost on what was going on. And so he had a session with my wife and I. And I remember just feeling this. It sounds super like out there. It is.
It is. But I get you.
But it really is. He creates a very deep container and like kind of really holds the space very well. It's very quiet in the room. And you feel like you're just like inside your head kind of communicating with him. And I left that afterwards. He was like, "Oh, you're going to be fine. Like you're going to be great." And I felt amazing. Like I felt like almost like I could levitate. Like it felt like.
Would you consider, so go more into what that doctor did, like so what his practice is so people can understand more. Is it like energy work?
I think it's a combination. It feels like a combination of the two. Like he's certified as an osteopath and craniosacral therapy, which is just basically dealing with everything from your skull to your sacrum, like that whole unit. So he's in your body. You have tons of fluid systems that, you know, pass by muscle and pass by all this stuff. So if you like, for example, hit your head, like there's a bunch of little plates in your head that can be out of alignment or pressing on something. And he's trying to alleviate some of that pressure so that fluid can just flow through the body. That's my limited understanding of it. I'm sure he would give a much better description of what he does. But there is a component of it that is very energetic. And I feel like he's doing something beyond that. Like he's really connected to you in like this kind of very spiritual, energetic way. And when I finished that treatment and my wife went in for treatment, she was feeling really awful at the time. I think she was in a worse spot than me. I left like, we're going to figure this out. I feel really good about this. Like my intuition was just like very kicked up. And so that night we got back to our apartment and all of our symptoms came back. and it was like really stark. And for some reason, like, I don't know whether it's something about the treatment, but I was like, it's mold. I just had this like
a light
epiphany.
bulb went
It was
off.
a light bulb moment.
Yeah.
Because I was like, it's happening when we're here. It's kind of away when we're gone. I had this great treatment. I felt really good. I felt like my intuition was really aligned. Like, I just felt like I'm going to figure this out. And I didn't really have answers. So he was the second doctor we saw. And it was just because we had great experiences with him before. Anytime we had, like, my wife hit her head and had a concussion, he was massively helpful in that and just getting her head back in order, essentially, and her body back in order after a blow like that. So we went to him second, and I was like, okay, it's mold. I didn't have the conclusive evidence that it was mold yet, but I had a feeling it was mold because it seemed really weird that it would unravel. I didn't know of anything else that would make it unravel that much in our place. And we were having like crazy situations where we were waking up and like our bodies were numb, like just weird symptoms. Like,
and I think when we had talked originally, Chris was telling us that you and your wife were in your, like, couldn't get out of bed, right?
Yeah.
You would just feel
we were
like
very sick. She really
sleeping.
could. She was having trouble staying hydrated. Like, one of the hallmark signs for us, if we're around it, is like you get like pallor, like white, like in your face. And it's like an obvious difference between the rest of your body. It's like almost from the neck up, we were just looking pale. But that night specifically, I was like, okay, it's mold. We have to start looking.
Was there
into
evidence? Obviously, there wasn't evidence
Not
of mold.
Not really. And it was a very complicated thing. There wasn't like obvious signs of like black mold. Maybe like some potentially in the bathroom, like on like the grout or something like that. But generally, that's not even that.
Did you get environmental testing?
Yeah, so that was our next move. Was we called a mold specialist to test. They found mold. They found it like aspergillus.
Now, how did they do it though? Because usually
I
when
know.
it's not visual, so I want everyone to
Sure.
understand that if you're able to see black mold, it's really
It's
bad.
really bad. Yeah, it's a horrible situation.
Yes. And so when a mold specialist comes, they usually take air samples.
Yeah, which are not ideal.
Yes.
And in order, if you do the air sample route, you have to spend a lot more getting many tests in your spot. So what we did was we got, a main test and a control test outside, but then we had them test like in the walls, in the AC, like with a hose, like they just put it in, or swab test certain ones that maybe looked problematic. So you have to, if you do the air test route, which is not the most ideal route, but it is more prevalent for people. So like, it's not that it's not effective. You just have to know how to leverage it because it's taking a very small sample in a very small location.
Yes. And it's like it's taking a snapshot
Exactly.
as opposed to a video. So I
Yes.
think it's important people understand.
Yeah, I think the air
that.
samples are good. If they turn out positive, you know that you have mold. If they turn out negative, it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have mold.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's a
Exactly.
big, and there's not a ton of info out there. The best that I've come across for testing is ERMI testing, ERMI
Yes,
testing.
which how do you know all this? You are just such a wealth of knowledge. I love it. Yes, it's ERMI. So I actually, Matt and I just did that here in the home because we are
test a
working
longer period of time.
It is. We're working with a functional nutritionist,
Great.
and she said, listen, we're going to be working with you. My husband, just a quick overview. We just discovered he has mold toxicity. He has 9 different mycotoxins in his body. And how this had gone undiagnosed, I think, for a long time is because he didn't have major debilitating symptoms like where he went from 0 to 100. It was almost like a slow progression of
It's chronic, it's insidious.
Yeah, of brain fog,
Yep.
of, I have like fatigue, malaise, but then some days I feel okay. Maybe I just don't have good short-term memory anymore because I'm getting older. Like all of these things we just shove under the rug. We were doing. And so I got these ERMI tests, which by the way, you've got to get a lot of dust on these things.
Yeah,
and
you do.
so if anyone's going to do an ERMI test, you have to not turn on any air purifiers, don't dust for weeks if you can, and you really have to get enough of that sample. Otherwise, they can't run the test.
Yeah, because they're essentially doing is testing the dust in like a carpet or furniture, and they're genetically testing everything in it. And the reason that's better than an air sample is because dust settles over time on surfaces for a longer snapshot and longer time horizon. So like you just have a better snapshot of what's gone on in your space over time, because that's the insidious and problematic thing about mold is a lot of people, if they have a major mold exposure, will leave with all of their furniture and bring it to the next spot. And they've brought mold now to the next spot if they don't treat the furniture correctly, because it's a massive blow. Like throwing out all your stuff like feels so dramatic.
I wonder if there's a way of actually cleaning mold in furniture.
There is. It's just generally more expensive to do it thoroughly than most people's furniture.
Yeah, that's
like,
true.
So even an ERMI testing, like if you were to test each article of furniture, but you know how expensive ERMI testing is. It's not super cheap.
It's like very
it's extensive, and it
the other thing is you have to isolate specific rooms. So if you have multiple rooms where you have high, you might have to do a separate sample for each room. So
which we did. But the other thing is, I'm thinking, because I did the ERMI test myself, how could we possibly collect that much dust on a piece of furniture?
And this is why you come to the conclusion of, if you've had a major mold exposure, you should highly consider getting rid of your furniture. Should highly consider anything porous like that, because you're just risking bringing it all. And this just comes to a bigger issue, is that it's just so prevalent. Like the information that I was gathering in this time was like, oh my God, how aren't more people just so screwed up? Like, especially just the way we build now and the way we build structures and what we build them out of and the materials that we use. We've created horrible conditions for mold, especially in like any place that has a humid climate. Like even just like mold can grow on your walls because your humidity is too high for a prolonged period of time.
And just going back to what you mentioned about how homes are being built different and porous surfaces. Yeah. So furniture, drywall, insulation behind
particle
the drywall,
board, all the things.
So that's what our homes are made of now. Yeah. And so it's really hard to eradicate once
even then there's the whole HVAC system can be contaminated too. So it becomes very, very difficult to get rid of it completely.
So let's talk about that. You have mold in a home, just to add so people can understand this. If you've had mold exposure in a home, you've tested positive for mold, and you're running your air conditioning, these spores are now going into your HVAC system and into your filtration system. And can you talk about more, Doctor, about what happens once it's in the HVAC system? Can we get that out? I mean, there has to be a way to clean that,
you can get
right?
cleaning done, but it's very difficult. And for a lot of people, it's impractical to completely replace your HVAC system because it's tens of thousands of dollars. But I think the important thing to realize is that mold is everywhere in the environment, and people have varying levels of sensitivity to it. So you're never going to be able to achieve zero mold. You can just do your best, and you can escalate your decontamination. So indoor air quality is an extremely important part. Air filtration and purification is important. You can talk a little bit about what you've done.
And this is
where
I think people get it confused, because that's a common thing that doctors will say to almost disarm people who are having issues, is that mold is everywhere. You can't control, blah, blah, blah. Like that's usually the general response, is that it's everywhere. However, it exists everywhere in nature, but nature is more balanced than the homes that we're building. So like there's an ecosystem and you're outdoors. So airflow is abundant in an outdoor scenario. So even if there's mold on a tree nearby, like you have abundant oxygen and airflow, and it's a mix of stuff. Whereas when we create indoor environments, we don't really create indoor environments in a balanced way. We're creating them out of lots of toxic material now. Ever since the 70s, like this really started in like the 70s when they started building like quick homes, and it changed. Like I think the 60s was like the last time we were building out of like more solid materials, and then it became faster and cheaper to import stuff from China, import stuff from all over the world, and import cheap products. And then the other thing we were doing was putting fungicides in the drywall to try to prevent mold, but all we did was naturally select for the most virulent mold, because we killed all the weak molds, and then the ones that could figure out how to survive those fungicides got stronger. So we basically put them through boot camp in our building process. So we have a lot of homes now in the US specifically that are really made of paper. Yeah. Like I just say, like a lot of these new houses are effectively made of paper. They're made of cheap woods, particle boards, drywalls, and stuff like that. And if you add moisture to paper, you're gonna get mold. And so it's kind of a shame that we've done that. We've devalued, because you could buy a multi-million-dollar house in LA that's made of paper.
Yep,
and it will.
That's
it's
true.
not a matter
this
of
is
if
true.
It'll get moldy. It absolutely will get moldy at some point, and it's whether you have the wherewithal and understanding to detect that and deal with it effectively. And you shouldn't let it fester, because it's one of those things, I think, because it kind of scares people because it feels like this like alien. And it kind of is. I mean, it's this living organism.
It is, but there's not also enough information.
Yeah.
I think what I'd like for viewers to get from watching this episode is
the info.
Is the information, so that they can not, put things under the rug and just chalk up maybe like memory loss or fatigue or not feeling well to age or to something other than possibly
Most
mold.
of that is not normal ever. Like brain deterioration, like if you listen to the work of Dr. Daniel Amen, he talks about like it doesn't matter if you're 70, if your brain is not functioning well like that, like you're forgetting stuff or your brain fog, or like you're just missing moments of your life, there's an issue. It's not necessarily mold. It could be, hormones. It could be substances that you're taking kind of over a prolonged period of time, but it's not like a natural progression of human, longevity. It's not something that should happen. So if you are experiencing ongoing symptoms, you definitely have to look into it, but it does feel overwhelming. I get why. And it should be the work of our medical system to do what functional doctors are now doing, which is taking a full kind of spectrum of what is going on in your life. And the hard part for most people is that costs a lot of money, because it's more personalized and it doesn't come with your insurance. And most of the things that clean up mold do not come under your insurance.
Yes.
And most insurance companies don't even want to deal with mold.
They won't. And I've dealt with that with certain homes where we've, had to file a claim for mold remediation, and let's say the remediation cost is $20,000 and insurance gives you $4,000 or $3,000. So yes, and that kind of leads us back to Dr. Allen and I had talked about this before, the challenges with Western medicine and just the whole system being broken.
It's just we've pressured every system to function on a for-profit basis as the core. Just that's the core element of corporate pursuit, is like if you're in the corporate system, if you're a publicly funded company, if anything, your fiduciary obligation is to shareholders and to profit production, and not necessarily. It's not that like, and when you bring this up, people are like, oh, are you saying all corporations are evil? No, I'm not saying that, but their incentive structure is such that they have this thing to worry about and you have all these other things to worry about. So I always just said, like, my incentives don't align with these companies' incentives. So you have to figure out, you do have to be a little bit of your own researcher now. And we live in a time that's abundantly easier than it was even 20 years ago. But you do have to take your health into your own hands. Because if I didn't, we would
still be
probably not be together. Probably would have left LA. Our careers would have been derailed. Like all of these things, if I didn't do that, if I didn't take the research into my own hands, we would be in a very different scenario than we are right now. And it's just that the Western medical system prioritizes quick, fast things. Insurance companies kind of own the whole operation. They own both sides of the equation. They're setting the prices that they're paying. So people think that if they go in to a doctor's situation, your insurance would want you to get preventative blood tests and stuff like that, but they don't, because they also know that insurance is tied to employment, and likely that'll be somebody else's problem. That'll be some other insurance company's problem. So we don't want to do this extensive blood panel. We don't want to do these things that can preemptively help you stay healthy. It's not cost effective for their bottom line and for moving things forward. So in order to get that, you generally, the only ones that exist, and I hope this changes, are cash pay model, like functional wellness centers. And that being said, is a lot of people do this cost analysis of like, oh, my copay is only $30, so I'm going to go this route, as opposed to going this route, which I might pay a few thousand to go see this specialist. But if you look at the time horizon of getting better, if you look at that $30 copay, maybe for 5 to 10 years, because they're not solving anything, you have to take tons of different supplements and all this other stuff. If you added that up over the years that you're going to try to heal through that model, you would spend more than what you would do if you use certain functional health modalities.
So given the cost of all these interventions that we recommend, I want to hear what worked for you and what you feel like was the highest return on investment for your improvement.
100% ozone therapy. Like the ozone therapy was the number one thing. And when I found, there's obviously tons of things you can do, like binders, supplements, things to kind of slowly and gently remove mold from your system. But mold, from what I've learned about it, is almost like a parasite. It's like very similar to a parasite. It's like a it gets in your body. It makes a home in your body. It steals your resources. It steals your water. It becomes like a hormonal imbalancing situation. It mimics estrogen in the body. It does all these things that are very hard to uproot and take a very long time. So if you can do it with binders, you can do it with diet, you can do these things, but they're going to take a couple of years from what our research was at the beginning. And I kept seeing, like, when I was doing research, certain people be like, oh, and this other thing that I found, like in my mold journey, like ozone therapy, like made a massive difference. It just kept popping up for me. And as I did more and more research on ozone therapy, the risks seemed very low, even though it's framed by the FDA as like a toxic gas that has no health benefits. Which is incorrect.
Yes,
and it's literally just if you breathe in direct ozone. But that has prevented, I think, a very robust field of study around it. And it's also just, unfortunately, not very cost effective in a scaling sense, because it's essentially, once you get the equipment and the oxygen, it doesn't actually cost that much. Like, it wouldn't cost healthcare companies that much money to provide treatment for people. And it works very well. So it's not like you have to go back for the rest of your life. Like, I did, I think, like 4 or 5 treatments, and I felt better than before the mold. Like, it really clears out your entire blood system, and it reoxygenates tissue that's probably been starving of oxygen and water and stuff like that. So that is the number one thing that made a difference.
Doctor, thank you so much. And I love ozone as well. And I'm glad that helped you and your wife get better and
massively.
even feel better.
Yeah.
But doctor, because we do offer this at the clinic, would you mind telling everybody what 10-pass ozone is, what the process is, and what patients can expect that might come in that are like Chris?
Sure. So for viewers that might not know what ozone therapy is, it's an oxidative therapy, meaning ozone causes oxidation to the blood, and that functions as a hormetic stimulant. It's basically a mild stressor that triggers your body to recover and become stronger. So it activates certain pathways such as NRF2, which upregulates your body's natural antioxidants, glutathione, catalase, superoxide dismutase, those pathways that help your body detox and fight off infection. It improves white blood cell function, modulates the immune system. So what the process actually looks like is that we take the patient's blood out and we mix it with ozone gas. And we do that about 10 times. So that's why it's called 10-pass ozone therapy.
Yeah. So basically, in English, it helps support the immune system and just kind of highly oxygenates the body so that if there's a disease, pathogens, that can be eradicated, because these things can't survive in a highly oxygenated
It's
state.
also a natural disinfectant. Like, we use now ozone sprayers in our house that creates ozone water, and you can spray it on stuff and disinfect counters and disinfect, even after like a rainstorm with lightning, that creates natural ozone in the environment and kind of creates a refresh in the environment, because
that's exactly why after a lightning storm, people think
sweet.
it smells good.
Yeah.
But
ozone.
Ozone has a very interesting history. It's been around for over 100 years. And they actually first started using it for medical purposes during, I think, World War I or World War II. They would limb bag. They would put it on wounds to prevent gangrene. And that's how they discovered that it was beneficial. And as kind of research improved, they were able to see that it had beneficial effects on red blood cells, on the immune system balance. So even in Germany now, they use it more commonly than they do here. It's popular in Europe because there's actually an FDA approved, the European FDA equivalent approved device for ozone therapy.
Yeah.
Well,
it's a massively important, I really think there should be robust study into it on a large scale. I think
but the problem is it will actually cure people and get them healthier. So that's a problem. It doesn't work.
And I'm hoping we need to reorient a system, because ultimately, if we keep going on the trajectory that we're going and keep, for whatever incentive structures exist, making people more and more unhealthy, which with the rise of all of our technology and all this amazing stuff that we figured out about the world, our health is like an exact opposite to these kind of newer things. And if that keeps happening, we're going to bankrupt the country. We spend more on our healthcare in this country than almost anything else. It's the number one form of bankruptcy for most people, is medical bankruptcy. And it's costing our country like trillions of, like 4x the military budget, I think, is going to healthcare. And we spend some of the most on healthcare. So we're spending some of the most, getting the worst outcomes here. And if that doesn't change, like, we don't have a society. That's the thing that people really
and
don't.
That's
If you map
scary.
that out over time, your birth rate declines, all this stuff, you don't have a society. Like I think people are worried about this overpopulation thing, and in the research, it does not seem.
There is no overpopulation.
There's no overpopulation. There's literally, our country is mostly empty. Most of our country is mostly empty, and we can support a lot more life on the planet than we think. We just have like really horrible practices of maintaining health in populations.
I agree. I want to go back to you and your wife discovering this mold. Where was it? Because it was not visible.
It was in a combination of our air conditioning system.
Oh.
It was behind walls in our bathroom.
So there was a leak or
and
something
then there was,
that was there?
Probably.
Yeah.
So the other thing we figured out in this process, because we hired that mold inspector, we got these results back. And then the building got very defensive immediately. It was like, we have to hire our own mold inspector. I was like, okay, cool. I have these results, but they have to do their due diligence and hire somebody. So they sent this guy, and I'm kind of explaining. I was like, look, we got this test. We had some mold come back. Like, this is where we tested. This is where you should test, et cetera. And he's going around, and we just became friendly, me and this their mold inspector, and we're talking about it. And I was like, look, it's just really important. This is my wife. Like, I'm trying to make sure that she's healthy. And
did you have the baby at the time?
No, we didn't have a baby. Yet? We couldn't get pregnant, which is another thing I'll talk about.
Was that all during?
Yes, it was. And it took us a long time to get pregnant. And once we got rid of mold, we did get pregnant. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people are being very affected by that on a pregnancy level.
That would make sense.
It's just mimicking your hormone. It's messing with your hormones on such a large level. And your hormones are very responsible in that system of creating a human life. But anyway, so we're talking to this guy, and I'm explaining, like, look, he could just see that we were really going through it. I was like, I'm really going through it. Like, I had these tests. I just need you to verify that they're real, so the building takes action. And as we got to talking, he was like, kind of quietly, like, look, they know there's mold in this building.
Oh my God.
And he, like, as just a person, he was just like. So this
must have been somebody who, do you think that they were hired before? Was it the same company?
I think a lot of these buildings have people on salary that mm-hmm. verify the things they want them to verify, especially because air samples, unfortunately, because of what we were talking about earlier, are the easiest, like, fake cure. Like, people come to like their house and be like, oh, there's no mold, we're good. And then ignore all these symptoms that they're having because the air sample, if you know how to use an air sample, I'm not even saying that the companies are doing it nefariously, but if you know how to position an air sample, or if you don't do enough air samples, or if they just don't pay for the extra samples, you're getting a very inaccurate and small snapshot of a larger picture. So he kind of said that to me, and I had to then fight with the building. Like, you guys are like hiring people who you're trying to get, because they have this huge issue that they have to deal with. And what people don't know about mold is it's a very expensive issue to clean up. So if you have a building and there's a mold issue in the building, you could be talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, plus relocation. Yeah. So if this was in a building and they would have to relocate and then contain and remediate, which is hundreds of thousands.
And they don't want to do that. They want to just like hire the handyman that works at the place to fix it. But those people don't have the proper isolation gear. So like, even we had an issue where they just like, when we weren't even in the room, they just like cut open the ceiling to like see, but then they contaminated all of our stuff.
Yeah.
So you're just opening up the wall.
So let's talk about that. Yeah. Right?
You have to have a very specific way of dealing with it.
That's right. There's a very specific way. You definitely cannot just cut a section out that has been infected, because the spores.
Yeah, it's a living entity.
Yeah, they'll start spreading everywhere. Yeah. So that's horrible. And then what happened from there? Yeah,
so he told us that I had to fight with the building. We immediately left our home, didn't have anything figured out with the building, left all of our stuff there, but just went and stayed in a hotel. We ended up spending like $10,000 on hotels for a month while fighting with our building.
So they didn't even start the remediation?
No, because
there was no acknowledgement.
Buildings don't want to deal with it. What ended up happening, I figured this out just by like asking, they were doing repairs on the building, and it was like multiple buildings in Silver Lake, a lot of apartment units. And the one over from us, so it was like a lot with 1, 2, 3 buildings right next to each other with like little alleys in between. And the building next to us, there was like this, it was a stucco building, and there was this bowing out of like the stucco. And so they tried to fix it, and they were just cutting it open and trying to fix it. And they were realizing there's all this termite damage behind the stucco. And so they kept going up and the wall kept getting open. And it was supposed to be just like a little fix in the corner. And essentially the contractor was like, you're not going to be able to fix this with just like a patch. Like you basically, the people who bought the building before we moved in, they got kind of hosed. The previous owners did a really terrible stucco job on all the buildings. So it looked really new and it looked really nice, but the water ceiling was screwed up. So essentially all this stucco that they had, these big buildings, water was just getting flooded behind all of the walls. So,
and that's why they were.
And so the building, as they're working with this contractor, catch wind that like they got kind of screwed and they're going to have to redo the stucco on the whole building. They were just getting people in the building. They just remodeled tons of the things. So they just halted all of the work on that building. But then they left all the moldy wood, termite damaged wood, just like in a pile. And they're not communicating with the groundskeeper. The groundskeeper's coming around and leaf blowing everywhere. So he's just blowing.
No.
So he's just blowing it also as that.
And
house,
this pile was right next
to our one, like
your
right
unit.
next to our unit. Yeah, it was right outside, and I kept having to pressure. Like this is just all information from me, like overhearing other neighbors talking to contractors and going up to the contractor, like, "What's going on here? Like, how long is this going to stay here? It's completely wide open. There's termite damage." And even when I was talking to the VP of the company, because I just worked my way up the company, I was like, "Look, this is an issue. I'm trying to send them articles like your tenants are going to get sick. I'm currently sick." All this stuff. He's like, "Oh, it's just termite damage." I was like, "What do termites like? Wet wood. What do you think happens when wood gets wet? It's gonna get moldy." Like termites and mold are very together in a situation. And so we ended up eventually negotiating getting our money back for the hotels and stuff like that. But they didn't cover things like we had to get ozone all out of pocket, and we went to an expensive place at first because it was the only place we knew about at the time. And we kind of just ate that loss, but at the same time, because we found ozone therapy in that period of time, and we found it through a nurse at a wellness location, and she just kind of gave us a hint, and I did my own research. But the ozone sped up our recovery. And like I woke up one day and my wife couldn't get out of bed. She couldn't keep enough hydration down. I was just like I thought she was going to like faint or something like that.
That's horrible.
And we ended up, instead of going to the hospital, because it's way stupider to go to a hospital than in LA to get just like an IV drip. Like to go to a hospital just to get hydrated would be so stupid. And you wait 4 hours
or 6 hours, like 4 hours
a couple $100 and getting like an IV. So we really just went in for an IV because we were desperately dehydrated, which for people who don't know, mold can steal your water. Like it's actually absorbing water in your body and taking it away from you. So we had a really incredibly hard time staying hydrated. So we got this IV, and basically one of the nurses was just like, "Hey, like you might like this new therapy that we're offering. Like I can't say too much about it." She was like being weirdly cryptic about it. I'm like, what is happening? Like,
yeah,
this whole thing was so weird because like the mold person was like, "Hey, they know they have mold." I'm like, well, who is this a movie? Like what's happening? Like why are you doing this? And then she was like, "You should look into it, but like, I can't give you too much information."
And that's sad. Okay, like, that's what? Sad. The like secrecy and the way that people behave over these regenerative therapies is wild.
It's just because of our DOJs. Like DOJ is very like overlapped with pharma, and like if you have the DOJ coming after your wellness facility, you're screwed. And that was happening a lot to companies during COVID who were pushing ozone therapy as a potential help or an adjacent treatment to whatever was going on, and they were getting shut down. So like they had become very scared of being like, "Hey, ozone, it's solve your problems." Like they didn't want to come right out of the gate and say that. They had to be like, "Oh, it might, like if you blah, blah, blah." They have to just protect themselves. So after doing the research, I was like, you know what? From what I've researched, not a lot of risk. There's a very low risk profile to doing ozone therapy. It's really the only issue with it is improper administration. That's like the main risk that I found, so you just have to go to a place that knows how to do it. But like I did a treatment. I remember we were in a hotel. My wife was about to quit all of her work. She's like, I just literally can't do it. I can't show up. She was teaching yoga at the time. It was before she worked at Lulu. And she was like, "I can't stand in a room. Like the heat is like fatiguing me. Like I can't stand up." And she was distraught. I mean, it's like like she loves teaching and she's an incredible teacher. So for her to have to give up all that, I was like, just hold off. I'm going to go get this treatment and just let's see where we land on that. from the research I had, I was like, I have a lot of hope that this treatment is going to help us a lot. And I went and got one treatment. And I remember after, I didn't feel like 100% better, but I felt a lot of mental clarity. And like, it felt like systems were like kind of turning back online. I was like, whoa, that's incredible. And I called her, I was like, just wait, I'm going to book you an appointment. You should just do it before you like cancel all of your stuff. And so she went in like the next couple of days, and she also felt like, oh, I don't have to quit my job. I feel a lot better. So we ended up doing about 4 treatments we probably could have done 3, but we had to like move stuff we had to get all the stuff out of our apartment. We ended up throwing a lot of it away, but we still had to do that job. I'm like in there with a gas mask, like a full on mask. And like, it's crazy, after ozone, people talk about something called unmasking. Like it can kind of reveal issues because you're taking so much garbage out of your body that now your body's like, whoa, like this happened really slowly over time, like the mold exposure. But now when I've removed all that and I'm back in our spot, it was like, my wife couldn't even go in the spot. Like I just had to do it like with movers. I was like, and so we ended up throwing a lot of stuff out, but we felt by the second treatment, I felt like my brain was turning on in a way that it hadn't in a long time. Like I could think, I could like logically plan things. It was very alarming that it can happen that slowly over time. And then all of a sudden you're in a position that you don't know yourself and you don't know why your energy is completely gone. But within 2 treatments, I felt like, okay, we're making progress. And it really saved us in a huge way because we weren't even sure how we were going to continue taking care of each other. We were both so sick that like you're like basically like 2 wounded soldiers trying to like handle each other. So we're like, do we go back to our own families and like have them help us? Like we're pretty in like a place where we're like, and then how are we going to find a spot that isn't moldy based on like our research?
You have post-traumatic stress disorder.
So much PTSD.
After that.
And unfortunately we found a new build, which has its issues. It's it's going to have an issue. And we even did have a mold issue there, like from a leaking toilet in the wall, but we addressed it. And fortunately we're very on top of it now and can deal with it. But, it was a wild time to go through that.
That's crazy. So one of the things about your story that I would have never even thought about was the mold exposure from external factors being
blown in or
it's a high enough concentration. Contaminating your building. And,
sure.
And probably the whole thing is contaminated.
Well, I think the walls in our unit also had that same. It is more like that was probably messing us up because now you've opened a wall with tons of mold. So you're like all the spores are going everywhere. But it was also just an indicator that that's likely what was going on behind our walls too, is that they had the same stucco issue on because it's the same contractor who did all the same stuff. So there's a high likelihood that that's going to be the case. So it was like a really eye-opening and crazy journey because it was like 2021, I think, when that was happening. And so the housing market here was still crazy. Like people were still all work from home and moving all over the place. So like, we'd go to a showing and there'd be like 60 people and they'd all like pre-applied.
I remember
we'd get to like a showing and it would be like, you'd smell paint, but it would also be musty. And it's like, they just freshly paint to like cover up other smells. And so I was like, I can't apply for an apartment before I go like feel it out. Cause we were very sensitive at that time. That's the thing. We did heal very quickly. We were very sensitive to chemicals. We were very sensitive to mold. Like if we went in a place that smelled like mold, like we would immediately be like, oh, I gotta get out of here. Like it was like, we were like trained mold dogs. Like I was like, if you just bring me into your house, hire me, it's like, I'm like, you got a problem. You gotta get out of here.
I know. I think that's such a huge, that's such a huge tip for people is if you can smell mold or mildew or something the air is not clean, that means the mold is already beyond livable conditions.
It's a very inconvenient truth for people because it is such a pain in the butt. Like, and I don't mean to harp on the hardness of it, but I think it is important for people to understand that it's a very serious thing, but it's not an easy thing to deal with. And you will get a lot of resistance along the way of figuring it out. A lot of people who want to just avoid that it's happening, or a lot of mold companies that will essentially you'll hire for $400 or $500. They'll come and tell you don't have mold. You feel good. They got $500 to take an air sample. So it's like a weirdly it's like trauma. Like
they're re-traumatizing each other and kind of like in the ways that they need to like avoid
avoid like a real issue that they have to deal with. So like the thing that is hard for people who are probably listening to this who might be going through it is like, oh, we can't afford that. You can't afford your health falling apart. Though.
See, that's
the thing that people don't do, the opportunity cost equation.
That is correct.
What we did was like, oh, if we both lose our jobs, we both lose our income, can't work, can't take care of each other, can't do that. What does that cost?
It's priceless.
It's and I've heard a great analogy is like, if you had $1 billion and the person you love most in the world got sick, how much of that money would you use to make sure they got better? You use all the billion.
Correct. That's
right.
Correct.
So you already have the thing that's worth a price. It's a priceless amount. You would spend any amount of money to feel good or your loved one to feel good. So just deal with it. Like, it sucks. I'm not even trying to sugarcoat it. It was an awful time for us. It was awful to deal with it. It was hard to lose all of our stuff and restart. And like, all this stuff is really challenging. But you falling apart, if you're just looking at a dollars and cents thing, is much more expensive. You cannot work. You cannot do things. So it's like alluring to think like, oh, if I just avoid this and like just trudge through, and like maybe you have like unbridled determination to get through stuff, even with brain fog, even with your eventually your body can't deal with it.
What quality of life is that?
It's not.
Exactly. And
it's not life.
Exactly.
You're actually slowly dying.
Exactly.
Which is a crazy thing to understand, but it's an imbalanced ecosystem thing. And there are lots of things you can do in your home to prevent excessive growth. Things like what you're saying, air purifiers is honestly, any new kind of structure is an absolute must, because you're dealing with even other things like chemical exposures, like cheap furniture and cheap walls and stuff like that have other issues. But just deal with it. Like, it sucks. You have to find the right people. You have to do a little digging. You have to become your own detective. There's
Be your own advocate.
Yeah,
that's like our number one message.
Because your incentives are highly aligned with keeping your family healthy, other than businesses that are trying to keep you on some sort of a situation that you keep paying the business, which is understandable. It's not even like, I'm not even trying to villainize them. It's like, that's what their incentive structure is.
That's correct.
So as long as we get that out of the way and understand, like, okay, your incentive is to make money, my incentive is to stay healthy, let's meet in the middle somewhere. Like, you have some tools, I can gather tools from outside. But that's why I think I'm a really big advocate for functional health and a lot of these regenerative therapy centers, or hopefully they just
like ours.
Like, I hate when people call it like alternative wellness. It's like, it's not really alternative. It's like kind of the main portion of wellness, and like food, what you eat, your environment, those are your main wellness. And then like, look, Western medicine has incredible stuff. Some of the advancements that we've done with imaging, or like if you break your bone or get shot, like, I want Western medicine very much so to help me out with that. But for a lot of these more chronic situations, I feel like we're woefully ill-equipped to deal with that.
100%.
We don't have nutrition training for most doctors. Most doctors don't spend any time understanding.
It's like 6 hours, 6 or 8 hours.
It's like one lecture in medical school.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a very low amount of information. And that's just sad, because you're building your body out of the things you eat, that you breathe, and that you drink. So it's very important to control for those things. I tell people, if they get their water purification system right, their air purification, and they just have good sourcing on food, you're going to eliminate like most of the issues that you have. There's still obviously other issues that can prop up like this, like mold and house stuff, but the air purifiers, things like that can help. And there are other ways of like cleaning your clothes. You can get ozone attachments on your washing machine, which we have, and it ozonates your clothes so that it kills mold. Like, if you're at a place that's full of mold, you're not bringing it into your closet and then having all of your other stuff get moldy. And once again, also, it has to have a moisture source and a prolonged moisture source. So even things like dehumidification when it's summer, or running the air conditioning to bring down your humidity level in your house. Like, there are a lot of things you can do, but you just have to become aware that you're in charge of balancing your ecosystem.
Correct.
So
nobody else.
Apart from ozone therapy, what are 2 or 3 other things you might recommend that you feel like move the needle for you?
Things like binders like activated charcoal, or what's the bentonite clay, like all these different binders that can bind to, the mold in your body and pull it out are really helpful. Things like NAD are really helpful. Just making sure you're hydrated. So like IV drips, things like that are very helpful in the interim of dealing with it. And there's like, some people will take like things like fungicides and other things like that. To me, those things, because ozone works so well, I think are, in my opinion, too harsh for the body, when ozone really has no effect on the body other than detoxification and then reoxygenation of your body. And then a lot of, like your machines have like the UV light attachments and other things, stuff like that. Anything to disinfect your blood, like the living entities that are in your blood.
Yeah.
And I think, ozone, the benefit of it is it's also catching other stuff too, especially like your EBO2 therapy also has, it's cleaning your blood of like the plasmas and all this other stuff. So there's a lot of things that are beneficial about it. I would say it is likely, from what I've done research-wise, the most highly effective thing at many things, like at many detoxification modalities in your body, and can clean up many issues. And so even what you're asking earlier before we started, like, I want to understand, did you get your blood tested and all this stuff? I think there's a lot of these things that can end up racking up costs, and the obvious answer is just that you likely have it. Like, does it help me to understand that there's tons of mycotoxins in my blood when I'm in a moldy situation, my health is rapidly declining? Probably not worthwhile to spend $500 to confirm what is very obvious. That's at least my approach.
Yeah.
I was like,
well,
cool.
That was your situation.
Yeah.
But then there are also patients that have the slower decline, like my husband, and the blood tests, the traditional blood tests were still coming up in the normal range and nothing was wrong. Here, Matt, go home. And so, but clinically, he knew something was wrong. He felt intuitively something was wrong. And we had gone to like 6 or 7 different specialists. So only until after we had ordered those really expensive mycotoxin tests did we discover that he had the mold, heavy metals, and all this other stuff.
I mean, it's very hard in our environment, and the types of, the way the world has kind of drifted towards this kind of devaluation of all of these materials. It's like, it's weird, like air travel used to be like this really luxury experience, and now they've made it like so bad that you have to pay a ton of money to get a decent experience back.
I know.
Like, it's like they move the goalpost like to really bad so that you have to buy everything back.
That's such a great analogy.
You're just buying regularness back.
That's
really like first class. Like, ooh, you have a reclining seat. Like,
you don't have to pay for food now.
Yeah, you don't have to pay, but you did. You just paid like thousands of extra dollars. But it's just, it's funny, like, in order to get a good house that's like not moldy, you have to now, because the whole ecosystem of construction has been built around cheap paper houses, it's so cheap to get those that you almost have to be, it's not, I don't want to say insane, you just have to know enough to force yourself to spend more money, alarmingly so, to get something healthy. It's like regenerative agriculture, like organic. We've made it so monocrop, like everything is so monocropped and nutrient devoid of like tons of nutrients, that now the farmer who's going to spend the time and energy and money to do it the right way has to charge so much more to offset their cost of figuring that system out. Whereas if it was just ubiquitous, all of them would be competing with each other, all these regenerative agriculture. So it would come down. So like, we've devalued so many industries so much that just to get normal, you have to spend luxurious amounts of money. Like some of the stuff you can get like all throughout Europe, food, cleaner, all this stuff, it's not considered a luxury. We've weirdly made these things that should come standard in our life, like just clean food, just regular clean food from like a farmer down the street. Like that is now a luxury pursuit in Los Angeles. So it is. I mean, like things like Erewhon and these things thrive off of being people who are doing the selection for you so that you don't have to do as much work when you go to the grocery store, but it comes at a premium. People think you're just doing it to be bougie or whatever, which some people are. But there are some people who are like, well, you just have really great clean produce for my family. And I, unfortunately, because everybody's been out compete by these giant corporate manufacturers of food, I have to now go to a place and spend more money to get just regular stuff.
Yeah, it's sad. But so I mean, thank you so much, Chris, for sharing your story. That was very insightful. And I think a lot of viewers probably going to, think twice and maybe consider that they might have mold exposure or toxicity if they have, some common symptoms of headaches, brain fog, fatigue, things like that. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And
it's been a pleasure.
Allen?
And I think for the viewers that you did another episode on mold a few weeks back that they can refer back to. Yeah. So that's a good one as well.
Yeah, there's lots of good info out there now. There's more and more info coming out about mold, and there's more resources. And I think people are starting to become aware. It's just a scary thing to deal with because of how prevalent it is and how much takes to clean it up. But it's doable. I did it. And you can do it in a very short period of time if you have the right treatments and the right support. So make sure you find that right
Great.
support. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks.
This podcast is sponsored and brought to you by One Body Medicine. You can learn more by visiting onebodymedicine.com. That's the number 1, bodymedicine.com. You can also follow the show on social media under the handle Pure Wellness Pod. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.